Hello there YouTube, my name is Chuggy and today I am playing some Battlefield 3, playing some Conquest on CN Crossing and Conquest Domination on Scrap Metal. Today guys it is question time part 36. As always guys, and I say this every single question time video, but I always truly mean it, you have submitted some superb questions for me to answer, from what I think of the Oculus Rift to one of my favourite childhood moments. And today guys, I'll be answering your amazing questions with some god honest answers. That's what this series is all about. And these answers will be set to Battlefield 3 even gameplays. Today I'm playing, as I've said, Conquest on CN Crossing and Conquest Domination on Scrap Metal, and it's two quite different gameplays. The first gameplay you're obviously seeing here right now is the Conquest match on CN, and today, well, in this game I felt like doing some aggressive recon work. And you'll note that I'm using the SV98. It's a rifle I don't use very much, and it's kind of surprised me. The more I use it, the more I kind of like it actually. It's very, very, very good to sort of snap, shoot and fire from the hip. The actual hip fire spread is very good from sort of standstill. So a very nice, reliable rifle the more I get used to it. And the second game is actually very kind of odd for me, because I tend to play the objective or play tactically. In the second game, this game on Scrap Metal, I went around with the MP7 and I went to be a slayer. I just wanted to kill everything I could see which moved and wasn't on my team. And that was basically my objective for the whole match, and well, it went quite well. So two very different kind of gameplays, and yeah, hopefully they will be an excellent backdrop to your amazing questions. Now, if you have any questions you would like me to answer next question time, all you have to do to submit them for answering is to pop it down in the comments section below. That's what all these guys have done in the previous question time video, and without further ado, I'll now get to answering their amazing questions. And question 1 and 2 this week comes from Tom Jake 767, and they ask, first of all, is the Steam Summer Sale emptying my wallet like it has his? Yes it has. I've actually doubled my Steam library size. I've gone up from 50 to about 100 or so games. And yeah, I've spent way too much money putting it, frankly. Having said that, I have bought games which I've been wanting to buy for a little while, and I've just been waiting for them to come down in price, so I'm quite happy with my decision to purchase them now. And you know, I've got a lot of very cool games on PC which I've been waiting to play, which is neat. And the second question, after showing Tom, and this is Tom by the way from my squad and who we do sim racing with, I showed him a video of someone playing R-Factor 2, which is the next generation of R-Factor, the sim racing sim that we used in the sim racing world. And I showed him a video of R-Factor 2 being played with basically head tracking equipment. In this video's particular case, and you can watch it, there'll be a link on screen now, there it was being played with a thing called Track IR, but many of you will have hopefully heard of this thing called Oculus Rift, which basically does the same job. The video is impressive. It shows the guy, driving around, looking around, and the camera in the game changes to where you're looking. And basically Tom's question is, would I consider buying something like the Oculus Rift for that kind of unique immersion? Well, yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, if it truly adds to the experience, I have no problem in spending money to get that, added experience. Some games or some experiences like sim racing, for instance, hugely benefit from the ability to move around, move your head freely in space, and the game will track that and update the game. For instance, games like Armour or Flight Simulator, it's very, very valuable to be able to look, and you get that kind of representation applied in the game as well. So if it adds to the experience and I find it useful, absolutely, I have no problem with spending the money. It's not going to be cheap, obviously, it's new technology, but I have no problem at all picking up the new technology, supporting it, and hopefully making an investment to make it better in the future. So yeah, I think that sums those two questions up. Thank you very much, Tom, for those superb questions to kick off this week. Next question comes from D Corrigan 120, and it's echoed by a few people as well. And basically, what am I looking forward to in terms of the new PlayStation? What single feature am I looking forward to the most? And if there was going to be another class added to Battlefield 4, what would it be and why? So I'll answer the question about the classes in Battlefield 4, what I would add and why. So basically, I think there is a class which has been in previous Battlefield games which I think would definitely definitely do well if it came back today, and that's the Spec Ops class. Their job was basically to get behind enemy lines and cause havoc. They were given a submachine gun and some C4, and their job was to, not necessarily to slay, but to observe and to take, the opportunity to destroy and basically cause confusion within the enemy. That is very similar to kind of the recon role in Battlefield 3. If you pick up a recon class with a submachine gun, say tugs and obviously the beacon, you can start having teammates spawning behind. They will know where obviously the opponents are thanks to the fact that you're gathering intelligence, and you can cause the enemy some serious troubles. Now, the thing which I think is missing from the recon is C4. It's completely hopeless if a vehicle comes along or anything like that. And the problem with the recon as it stands right now is people see the sniper rifle and go, wow, I must snipe. So what I'd probably do is introduce the Spec Ops kit back into the game and make the recon kit as it is now back into a sniper, which is how it used to be in games like Battlefield 2 and the like, where basically, although the sniper's primary job was obviously to engage from range, but to also call in, I think they had laser, well, certainly in Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, which is where I got my start in Battlefield, the sniper had obviously a rifle, but also a laser designation tool. Not like the Soul Flam as we know it today, but would actually call in sort of an airstrike on its own. And you only got one of those, and you had to wait, I think, 2 or 3 minutes for it to recharge, so you couldn't just spam these things. But very good to take out vehicles and whatnot from long range, but not to being a killing machine as it potentially could be now. So bring back the Spec Ops kit, I would say. D. Corrigan's second question is, what feature am I most looking forward to from the PlayStation 4? Well, it's going to be a bit of a nerdy answer, and it's purely a technical one, which is basically I am liking the amount of RAM that the PS4 and, for that matter of fact, the Xbox One have. 8 gigabytes is a good number. In the future, it will be laughed at as a very small value for RAM. We've got, for instance, in the PS3, 512 megabytes of RAM, and at the time that was a good amount of RAM. It was decent. But you look at, say, your standard, I don't know, almost laptop, whatnot. You buy off the shelf today in like a computer shop, and it'll have 3 gig or 4 gig, of RAM in there. 8 times the amount. It's crazy, really, that your games console running Battlefield 3 like this, alright, admittedly sub HD and 30 FPS, it's running in such a small space. So I think 8 gig of RAM, it gives the developers lots of room to maneuver, include lots more shiny, which we all appreciate. But also, it's a good number for going forward. It should hopefully last quite well. And in the PlayStation 4's case, and this is the reason why I meant saying RAM here, is it's unified. What does that mean in English? Basically, all 8 gigabytes or whatever the developer can access is in one place. Traditionally, and certainly in the PlayStation 3's case, it was in 2 basically segments, and you couldn't have, for instance, the graphical processor and the CPU accessing the same area. They had their own defined zones, and that's all they could talk about. Or talk to. PS4's case, it's all one big block now, which means you can start to offload and share data, which should potentially provide some pretty interesting opportunities for the developers, using unused graphics card power to do, I don't know, AI or whatever the case may be, physics maybe. Interesting stuff, and we'll see what games take advantage of that as time goes on. So D. Corrigan, thank you very much for your superb questions there. Next question comes from StreetBoss24, and this one's also echoed by a few people later on, and they ask, have I seen the Formula 1 2013 gameplay, and what do I think of it? Well, what I will say is what I said last year, which is, I don't care about the new features, Cody's, give me bug fixes, and it feels like a broken record. I won't stop, and I won't lie, the classic cars on classic tracks, and classic cars on new tracks, new cars on old tracks, all very nice, all very neat, but if the game has the same problems that 2012 and 2010 and 2011 have, it's just going to make me regret my purchase. I regretted buying 2012 after I played it for a significant amount of time because it was just the same old, story. A fantastic racing game with, a lot going for it, ruined by just annoyances which could have, easily been removed if Codemasters, as the developers, focused on getting the polish on. Things like AI driving into you, the penalty system not being consistent, bugs and other glitches, just things which make you forget the amazing racing game which is there and just focus on the negative. So 2013, don't get me wrong, looks cool, but I'm concerned, and I definitely won't be buying it on release as I did with 2012, especially since Cody's have to confirm that there won't be a demo this year. So I'm interested, but Cody's have got a lot to work to do, in my eyes, and that's just my personal opinion on it. So Street Boss, thank you very much for your question there. Next question comes from the JH1015, and it's one I'm going to have to do a little bit of backstory for, as it's Formula 1 related, and a couple of you won't obviously follow Formula 1, as many of us do, in this detail. And basically, there's a Formula 1 team called Sauber, very well established, a lot of success in the past. A lot of the top drivers have gone through the Sauber team to get to where they are today, and they are in financial difficulties. And as it turns out, thankfully, they've been able to broker a deal with some Russian investors, and they've been able to save the team. It's been pretty serious. Drivers haven't been paid. People who have been providing parts and whatnot haven't been paid. So hopefully this deal will mean that Sauber is in a lot more stable position financially, which is obviously what we want. We want more teams and drivers on the grid in the pinnacle of motorsport, and it is good to hear in terms of, obviously, it means that the work that Sauber do in terms of bringing up new talent can continue. Speaking of new talent, Sauber must now place a 17-year-old Russian driver into their team as part of the deal. And, this is something which you tend to see quite a lot of in Formula 1, the aspect of pay drivers. Now, and I will quite openly admit this, I don't tend to follow the younger drivers around the place. I tend to follow Formula 1 because that is where the truly best of the best are. The young gentleman in question, Mr. Robin Fruns, and I've probably said that wrong, any Spanish, any Russian speakers among you, please do correct me. Is apparently one of the, and arguably one of the most talented new drivers out there at the current point in time. And the JH1015's question is, assuming that they have the right, this being Sauber, have the right to choose their drivers for next season, or whatever the case may be, what do I think will happen to Robin, given the situation? So, what I will say is Formula 1 to me should be the pinnacle. It should be the best drivers in the best cars pushing to the limit with the best technology and everything else. And you do see quite a lot these days, just down to the financial climate of the world and the sport in general, that there's a lot of pay drivers going on, rather than in the past where the driver would be paid by the team, the driver pays the team to drive. And I sincerely hope that, as financially the world recovers, that situation, retracts a bit, that we start to see more drivers being paid for their skill rather than paying for the opportunity. And, I really do hope that if Robin has the ability and has the talent, that he will make it into Formula 1 in that case. Now, as it sounds, given what obviously has been publicly said by Sauber, it's a done deal, and we may or may not see him. We don't know. That's up to Sauber, and obviously they know the details of their contract and whatever else. But I really do hope that if he has the talent and the ability, that we get to see him display that. There are a few drivers this year who I must admit I had high hopes for, and they haven't really delivered. For instance, Max Chilton hasn't really done anything much. He's still in his rookie year, give him a chance. But, if he's in next year and it's still the same performances, I would be questioning his position in the sport. But anyway, I digress. So if he's got the talent, I want to see him in the sport. And if it's a case of, well, Sauber by contract to keep themselves in the sport, he will get a drive. Well, I'd much rather have a team there than a team not being there. So the JH1015, thank you very much for your question. It's really interesting how the politics and finance of Formula 1 is playing out these days, and we will have to wait and see what happens next. Thank you very much for that superb question. Next question comes from Elusive Kev, and they also echo the question I asked earlier about F1 2013, but also along the lines of what do I think about the classic modes, which Cody's will be adding, and the return of Grand Prix mode. Well, I've kind of mentioned before the classics mode. It's I like things being added, but in F1's case, please fix the bugs, Cody's. I've already said it again. It's been less than 10 minutes. I like the idea of it. Some of the old Formula 1 cars truly were beasts, and it'll be interesting to see how they handle compared to current cars and all this kind of jazz. And again, it's nice to see Grand Prix mode making a return. For those of you who don't know, basically, in previous games, not 2012, you had the ability to drive as one of the real-world drivers. And that was neat because then you could try and reenact, races or drive as your favourite driver. adding features is good in that regard, because frankly it's just, it's what they've already got, just a kind of a scenario-based system which you get to decide. And sort of Elusive Kev goes on to mention, hopefully by adding Grand Prix mode back in, it won't be such a sort of boring or annoying experience, because you can start to make the fun up yourself, and I think that is a superb point to make. I mean, in general, I love Formula 1. I love the Formula 1 games, and it's just a real shame that Cody's have had these problems, these issues with it, with AI or bugs or whatever else, because it really has distracted everyone from the real gem of a racing game, which is there. And I think their insistence to try and add new things, for instance, I'd be surprised if we see Champions mode back. It was just a flash in the pan thing, something to put on the box for the marketing that year. I'd much rather have a dull box with no marketing but an amazing game which then spreads because of word of mouth than just some tagline which really means nothing. So Elusive Kev, thank you very much for those questions there. I hope that answers those for you. Next question comes from Lauch, and they ask, outside of modern military shooting games or that genre, what games or gaming series have I enjoyed the most during the 7th console generation? First of all, great question, and really 2 games jump to mind straight away, those being Fallout and the Fallout series in general actually, and Red Dead Redemption. Now, both Fallout 3 and Red Dead Redemption are on my sort of games that, best games I've played list, because quite frankly they delivered an experience which partially I wasn't really expecting, but also, really involved me. In both cases, the sort of story really suckered me in. I actually cared about what was going on around me, and because of that, I actually really actually gave a rat's ass about what I did. And both stories take quite interesting turns, quite similar turns in some aspects, and it just felt so right. And that whole kind of experience, that whole kind of journey, just was spot on for me. So those 2 games this console generation really stood out above the rest, and yeah, it was a superb experience to play both of those games. So Lauch, thank you very much for that great question there. A very difficult one to answer actually. Just those 2 were above and beyond the rest. Next question comes from Joe Mould, and they ask, what is my favourite film genre? Well, it's going to be a bit kind of stereotypical as, oh, blimey, look at that. Got some frame droppage from my capture software. I've had quite a bit of that recently. Oh well, I digress. Joe asks, what is my favourite film genre? Well, I'm going to be a bit stereotypical here and say, well, basically action films, and in particular James Bond films. I don't know, there's just something about them which I just quite like watching. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy a good comedy or whatever else from every now and then, but James Bond films, be it explosions, stunts, the pretty women, all the rest, it just adds up quite nicely. So action films, and in particular James Bond series, I think is the best way to answer that. So Joe, thank you very much for that question there. Next question comes from Michael Elving, and they ask, how long has the UK had fibre optic internet, and am I looking forward to Need for Speed Rivals? So I have no idea how long the actual fibre optic cable has been in the ground. Certainly I can recall seeing fibre optic stuff since I was maybe 7 or 8, so I don't know, a good 15, 16 years. It's just that only now have people really started to take notice, and there's been investment in actual fibre technology. It's the future, and a few of you actually ask a little later on, do I find the ping times or whatever else to be better or worse and all this kind of thing. Yeah, there are pros and cons to copper and using electric current, whatever else, to send the signals, but fibre is just that lot quicker. It's a bit more versatile in terms of what you can do with it, and yeah, it's long overdue. For instance, South Korea have got some crazy internet speeds. Pretty much, a large amount of that and blimey, was that a USAS 12 I just saw? Blimey, I haven't seen any of them for a while. I didn't even remember seeing that when I was playing the game. South Korea, original point, South Korea, they have a lot of people playing video games at a very high standard, very high level. Their internet connections are ridiculously quick because that's just the culture, they just consume it. I think, access to the internet will be a human right before long, and obviously the quicker it is, the more you're able to consume, the more you're able to access, the better. So yeah, it's to answer the question, no idea, but there's a nice tangent for you. Am I looking forward to Need for Speed Rivals? You want to know something? It's not on my radar, I think is the best way to answer the question. You know, a Need for Speed game, it comes around every year, and it's a Need for Speed game. You know, there's nothing really making go, ooh, and take notice. Not like, say, Hot Pursuit when Criterion tried to reinvent it. Because, you know, Hot Pursuit was one of my favourite sort of series to play, and it happened to be part of the Need for Speed franchise. So Rivals is kind of on and off my radar in terms of what they're trying to do. Obviously it's going to be one of or around the launch title window for the new console, so I'm sure it's going to sell well and do well. We'll just have to wait and see what happens closer to the time. So Michael, thank you very much for your questions there. Let's go with Vordays for the next question, and they ask, well, they finished their 12th grade this year and were wondering what's the biggest challenges I faced in university as a student in comparison with the 12th grade. Well, I'll have to make a kind of assumption here that 12th grade is the equivalent of year 13. In the UK, basically we go from primary to secondary school, or at least this is when I left anyway, primary to secondary school. You get to leave school at 16, or you get to either go on to college or a sixth form and do year 12 and year 13. After that you go to university. Anyway, so that aside, when I finished year 13, I was kind of, I wouldn't say exhausted, but I was kind of sick of school. Because, you know, it's the kind of same old routine, and I'd been following it since I was 5. And, you know, I was 18 years old, I'd get up at 8 o'clock, well, not 8 o'clock, I'd get up at 7 o'clock, I'd leave the house at 8 o'clock to get to school at 8:30, and, you know, I was in lessons until 3 o'clock, and that was it. That was my life from 5 to 18. So yeah, it was I don't know, kind of frustrating and annoying really to go on like that. But I think the biggest challenge I had at university was actually getting used to not doing that. You know, you basically, your time is completely and utterly your own. Your lectures aren't sort of in a solid block. They're spread out across, say, a week or whatever else. And it is a challenge to get that timing right. And on top of that, for the first time ever, you've got to kind of, you know, contemplate cooking, cleaning, all that kind of stuff. Basically looking after yourself as part of that routine, a part of, you know, that whole experience. So I kind of miss it now, you know. I kind of miss the concentrated, you gotta do this and that. And even though I'm in a 9-to-5 job now, there's still a bit of, you know, flexibility, leeway in where I do things and how I do things. So I'd definitely say it's one of the biggest changes to get used to, and definitely one of the biggest things that takes a little while to get used to. But yeah, it's nothing to be scared of. Change is good, and, you know, having all that free time, the ability to decide what to do, yeah, you got to embrace the change, and you learn a lot about yourself. So Vordays, I hope that answers your question for you. A lot of free time is really very interesting to determine who you are. So, with that, the next question is from Yurt1, and they ask that I mentioned that The Last of Us isn't the best game I've ever played, but what is the best game I've ever played? Trying to leave nostalgia aside. I've kind of almost answered this, you know, previously, and I've already mentioned Red Dead Redemption and Fallout 3. There's one other game in my pantheon of greats, which basically would have to pick the winner from, and that's the original Metal Gear Solid. And this is leaving nostalgia out of it. It just taught me a lot about the world, and it challenged me to play a shooter game where you don't have to shoot anyone. Now, if I had to pick one game out of that list in terms of what I felt the game gave me, what I got out of the game, I'd have to go with Metal Gear Solid. I really would. Purely because it literally gave so much, and I was able to just get in tune with it, because every single time you play that game you take something away from it new. I mean, for instance, I for whatever reason decided I wanted to watch someone play Metal Gear Solid, and I found a long play of a guy playing Metal Gear Solid The Twin Snakes, which is the GameCube kind of remake of Metal Gear Solid, sort of from start to finish with all the cutscenes and all the rest. And I took so much away, and just in terms of little things which was said in the dialogue and everything else. I know that some lines were re-recorded and the cutscenes were quite different, but, you know, there's lots of little things that even now I take away from it or get new context on. So Metal Gear Solid for me is the greatest game I've ever played, and it's going to take something pretty special indeed to knock it off that top spot. So Yurt1, thank you very much for that great question there. Next question comes from Arsenal 2022, and they ask, do I have any advice for anyone starting university in September? Well, quite similar to actually the question just asked by Vordays. Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, I don't have one thing, I have a number of things to say. So first of all, get ready for a lot of free time and to manage that. And bearing in mind how to cook is also quite useful. True story, and you know, you could, if you ever met my parents, you could ask them this and they'll tell you, you know, it's complete truth. So when my parents dropped me off at university my first day, I, you know, unpacked everything, it was great, you know, on my own freedom, all the rest. And then I went, I'm hungry. And then I realised, hang on, I've got to cook. So myself and my parents, we went to the local supermarket to get some food and all the rest. I had a look and I thought, well, I don't want to have to cook this. I don't want to have to cook this. And I thought, bacon. Bacon is awesome. How do I cook bacon? I literally had no clue. No clue whatsoever what I had to do with this thing. Did I have to cook it? Did I have to bake it? Well, no, I didn't. I knew you had to fry it, but you know, I didn't know how long for, or you know, when, you know, anything to watch out for in terms of, oh, if it's, I don't know, say like chicken, you know, if it's not all white or the juices aren't clear, you know, it's probably undercooked. You know, I had no clue. So be prepared for the free time. Be prepared, you know, try and get organised where you can. Enjoy yourself for the love of God. You know, don't just be one of the people like I was in the first year, where basically I spent far too much time behind my, you know, my hall room door and just read books or whatever else. By all means, you know, have a few minutes for yourself every now and then. Have a break. And yeah, have a cookbook or two, or at least be, you know, semi-aware of what food is, and don't make yourself look like an ass on the first day away from home. Anyway, so a true story there for you, Arsenal. Enjoy it; it's an amazing experience, and yeah, I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun. So Arsenal, thank you very much for that great question there. Next question comes from GingerNut191, and they ask, did I go to Goodwood this year, and if so, what was my favourite car? You want to know something? Confession time. I've never been to the Goodwood Festival of Speed, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically a kind of, I wouldn't call it a festival, but basically, well, it is a festival, it's the Festival of Speed, but basically a huge gathering of racing cars and racing drivers to go up the Goodwood Hill Climb racecourse. Although I'm not sure if they really, you know, properly, actually race up the hill. I think it's more of just a chance for the public to see some amazing, classic, historical, and just in general super cool race cars in the flesh. And I've never been. It's a crime. I really do want to go to Goodwood. It's just that, you know, in the past I've either not had the money, or I've been too far away, or I've been doing something. I may have to make a serious effort to go and go to Goodwood next year, I think. Now, having said that, favourite car, obviously not being there, I can't really comment, but what I will say is that I believe that there was a couple of McLaren sort of old Formula 1 cars and stuff there. They're normally there, you know, the big 1,000 horsepower monster cars. I'm sorry, I just cannot get over the amazing noise which is the turbocharged engines, you know, the scream, the howl. So I'd have to say, you know, the MP44, I think that was there. You know, even not that any car from that era, just that noise. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, GingerNut, thank you very much for that question. If you did go, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to have to make a serious effort to get out there one year. Thank you very much for your question. Next question comes from Red Slayer 0006, and they ask, have I ever played Medal of Honor Warfighter, and am I in a relationship? So the answer to those questions is yes and no. I have played Warfighter, I enjoyed it very much, I thought the story was good. It wasn't great, but it was good, and the multiplayer was good, but not great. It was all in all a good game, not a great game. Am I in a relationship? No. I've fallen into the trap, which is I've been working and not giving myself any sort of time off, really. Work-life balance. Again, prioritising your time, very important, as I'm learning. So no, I'm not in a relationship at this point in time. I don't intend it to stay that way for long anyway. So Red Slayer, thank you very much for that question. And the next question after that comes from Infinity HD, and they ask, would I ever consider doing the GPVWC Formula Challenge? What's my fondest gaming moment and best moment with Matt, Mike and Tom? Well, the GPVWC Formula Challenge, I would like to, but it's a case of time. You know, the sim racing stuff, you may see the live streams or whatever else I do, you know, that's all well and good, but to get to that point, I've easily put in about 4 or 5, probably more hours of practice, plus a few hours of setup. You know, there's a lot of work which goes in, and unfortunately, I don't have that much time for these kind of things. So really, I'm limiting myself, for instance, to 2 race series at any one time. So for instance, if the GRC is happening and the World GT is happening, that's my 2. So it would have to look logistically and time-wise. I'd like to. It's a cool series, and I've driven the cars. They're nice cars to drive. Very stiff, very tricky to get used to, but no, they're pretty cool cars. But time-wise, maybe more of a limiting factor, unfortunately. What is my fondest gaming moment? Oh, that is a difficult one, you know. It really is. You know, there's a lot of pretty neat moments from games I've played, you know, for instance, Red Dead Redemption, when you finally meet up with your family, or in Metal Gear Solid, where if you have survived the torture, you get to, you know, save Meryl. There's a lot of stuff there. I think I'm going to have to go with saving Meryl, though. Nostalgia reasons, I'm afraid. And best moment with Matt, Mikes and Tom. I think one of the funniest moments we've ever had was when we were playing Rainbow Six Vegas, the original. You used to be able to do 4-player co-op, and there was a mission on a dam, and basically we always used to chuck a crap ton of C4 down, a hand grenade, and launch ourselves to the moon. So a lot of good times to be had there, and a lot of fun as well. So with that, I'm going to have to wrap up this question time. Unfortunately, I have run out of time yet again. Time, the always beats us here. So thank you very much, everyone, for your superb questions. I hope you have enjoyed my answers to them. Again, if you have anything you'd like me to answer, all you have to do is pop it down in the comment section below, and I'll get to answering it next question time. If you have, any comments or anything like that, but also please do feel free to put it down there. But if you could leave a like, dislike, whatever you believe this video deserves, that'd be fantastic. And if you want to see some more content from myself, you can always subscribe. So guys, I've been Chuggy. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time out on the battlefield.